Government advisor says anti-COVID measures could be further relaxed. BioNTech jabs for young kids open for bookings tomorrow morning. Senior central banker in China under investigation for violation of laws. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. As the city gradually relaxes its COVID restrictions, Government Health Advisor Professor David Hui believes a pandemic rebound is unlikely. He added that if there is no significant increase of COVID cases after an observation period of 2 weeks, the government can consider rolling out further relaxations for more large-scale activities. Timothy Lee reports.
Earlier this week, the government lifted its limitations on opening hours for the city's restaurants and bars. With the ongoing Hong Kong Sevens gathering more than 20,000 attendees in one stadium, Executive Council member Regina Ip said yesterday authorities might consider more COVID relaxations if the event does not drastically worsen the pandemic situation. Speaking on a radio program today, Government Health Advisor Professor David Hui said he agreed with Ip. Hui said there should be a 2-week period to observe whether the loosened measures would bring about a COVID rebound.
I think we need to have a bit of time to judge the two events, like the financial conference and also the Rugby 7. If these events did not actually lead to increase or rebound of the COVID, I think we should allow more social events to go ahead and even consider loosening the social distancing measures.
As the city's vaccination numbers are on an upward trajectory, Hui noted Hong Kong has the capability of further relaxing its quarantine measures for inbound travelers. However, he believes the city will need to maintain the mandatory PCR tests for new arrivals to prevent the risk of communal transmission. He added the test can help with the analysis of mutant strains. Meanwhile, the rules for the city's care homes for the elderly are such that residents cannot leave the premises unless it is necessary. Executive Council member Dr. Lam Ching Choi said the Social Welfare Department is considering to loosen this policy by permitting residents to take part in outdoor activities under a closed-loop management. He said the residents should be allowed to enjoy time in open spaces as long as they are not in direct contact with other members of the public. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The city reported 5,111 new coronavirus cases, an increase from yesterday. There were 494 imported infections. Among the 4,617 domestic cases, 12 care homes had infections. 7 schools identified outbreaks. The city registered 5 more cases involving the BQ.1.1 mutant strain and several other cases involving the XBB and XBD variants. Among the 494 imported cases, 4 of them carry the BQ.1.1 strain. 18 more patients died, bringing the city's death toll in this pandemic wave to 10,244. The baby version of the BioNTech shots has arrived in Hong Kong, with bookings available from 9 a.m. tomorrow. Children between the ages of 6 months and 4 years can take those jabs starting Wednesday. Authorities say the toddler and pediatric formulations of the BioNTech vaccine for children require a special dilution procedure. So children aged below 12 have to receive the shots at 4 designated centres, and parents must make prior bookings online. The centres include the Hong Kong Children's Hospital and Gleneagles Hospital. On the day of vaccination, children should bring along their original ID and a consent form from parents. Secretary for the Civil Service Ingrid Yeung appealed to parents to make bookings for their children soon, as they have weak immunity against COVID. It's the first weekend after public barbecue pits reopened, and some sites were quickly filled up with hungry picnickers. Authorities reminded residents to adhere strictly to the 12-person gathering limit.
Families and friends gather around the barbecue fire, a scene that's been missing for the past 2 years under the city's anti-pandemic rules. Many visited the barbecue site at Lion Rock Park today, a venue that's managed by the Leisure and Cultural Services Department in one of the city's autumn rituals. This woman said she's so glad to be here after 2 years of closures.
To
To avoid disappointment, she came as early as 8 a.m. to secure the barbecue pits, as the 14 pits here could only be enough to be shared by 3 large families. The use of barbecue pits are still subject to current epidemic rules. That means only 14 pits out of 26 can be used, while the others are cordoned off. At around 1 p.m., the site was full, so some visitors had to leave. This man said it's not surprising that people would be fighting for a place once barbecue rules were relaxed, so he would try to find sites further off. Meanwhile, more than 150 barbecue sites under the management of the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department are also reopening. There were notices to remind people not to gather in groups of more than 12, and groups must keep a distance of at least 1.5 meters between them.
A vice governor in China's central bank is under disciplinary and supervisory investigation. Fan Yifei, vice governor of the People's Bank of China, is being investigated by the Chinese Communist Party's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection and the National Supervisory Commission for suspected severe violations of disciplines and laws. Fan is one of the central bank's 6 vice governors, having held the post for 7 years. He joined the central bank after a career in banking on the mainland. Fan has spoken often on China's efforts to develop a digital currency. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he is justified in ordering a special military operation against Ukraine, saying Moscow was under threat from Kyiv-sponsored neo-Nazis. Speaking at a Unity Day celebration event, Putin said it is Russia and not the West that has Ukraine's best interests at heart. Nazvi Karim reports.
Neo-Nazis, Polish expansion threats, and a respect for the people of Ukraine. It was for these reasons, among others, that Russian President Vladimir Putin said the invasion of Ukraine was inevitable. Putin was speaking at a meeting with historians and religious figures as part of celebrations marking Unity Day in Russia. He said Ukraine was being ruled by a neo-Nazi regime, and Russia was forced to take action via its special military operation in February. If we had not taken appropriate actions in February, everything would have been the same, only from a worse position for us, Putin said. He said the situation would become deadly for Russia and suicidal for the Ukrainian people themselves. Putin said Poland is still coveting Ukrainian territory and has ambitions of annexing parts of the country. Putin insisted that Russia could be the only genuine guarantor of Ukrainian statehood and sovereignty. As Putin was accusing Western countries of interfering in Ukraine affairs, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visited Kyiv, promising unwavering support.
The United States is going to be with Ukraine for as long as it takes in this fight. There will be no wavering, no flagging, and no flinching in our support as we go forward.
The Pentagon later announced an additional $400 million in military aid for Ukraine, including refurbished T-72 tanks from the Czech Republic and missiles for Hawk air defense systems. On the battlefront, heavy fighting is reported in Bakhmut in Donetsk, one of 4 regions Moscow claimed to have annexed. Russia is desperately trying to capture the city, but they have been repeatedly thwarted by Ukrainian defenses. Meanwhile, in Beijing, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met President Xi Jinping on Friday and urged China to use its influence on Russia to end its military presence in Ukraine. Xi repeated a call for talks between Moscow and Ukraine, while pointing out that Germany and the EU could also play a key role in promoting peace negotiations. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
North Korea fired 4 short-range ballistic missiles into the Western Sea this morning, according to South Korea. It comes as the United States accused Russia and China of providing protection to Pyongyang from further sanctions by the UN Security Council. But Zhang Jun, the Chinese ambassador to the UN, called on the US to stop unilaterally playing up tensions and confrontation. The United Nations has condemned North Korea over its recent missile launches and the escalation of military tensions. In response to joint U.S.-South Korea military exercises, North Korea fired about 30 ballistic missiles over the previous 2 days, including an intercontinental ballistic missile. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield condemned the launches and blamed Russia and China for not standing with the Council in its stance against Pyongyang.
The DPRK, however, has enjoyed blanket protection from 2 members of this council. These members have bent over backwards to justify the DPRK's repeated violations, and in turn, they have enabled the DPRK and made a mockery of this council. You don't get to abandon Security Council responsibilities because the DPRK might sell you weapons to fuel your war of aggression in Ukraine, or because you think they make a good regional buffer to the United States.
Still ahead on tonight's news. Twitter faces uncertain future with layoffs and concerns over new policy. Current and former U.S. presidents campaign in midterm elections. And Chief Executive John Lee presents honors and awards in Government House. Welcome back to TVB News. Twitter has begun widespread layoffs as new owner Elon Musk overhauls the social media company. This as concerns grow about Twitter's ability to fight disinformation just days ahead of the U.S. midterm elections. Tracy Furness has more.
Twitter temporarily closed its offices and cut workers' access to internal systems Friday after telling employees they would be informed by email about whether they were being laid off. The move follows a week of chaos and uncertainty about the company's future under new owner Elon Musk. Musk, the world's richest man, is looking to cut 3,700 Twitter staff, or about half the workforce, in a bid to cut costs and impose a demanding new work ethic. One employee based in Birmingham, England, received his email Friday.
An email went out in the early hours of the UK that confirmed the sort of rumors we've been hearing for a while about there being layoffs coming. It said that if we would be affected, we'd hear to our personal email, if not to our work email. And it was about an hour after that I found that my work laptop was remotely wiped and access to Slack and Gmail revoked. Checked in with a few US colleagues who were still awake, and many of them were reporting seeing the same thing.
Analysts weighed in on the layoffs.
Look, ultimately, when Musk paid the $44 billion, it put a lot of pressure financially on this deal with the debt. Big layoffs were going to come. 50% is an extreme number.
I am absolutely sure that Elon Musk he knows what he's doing, and that the change in the company is driven by his goals and what he wants to do with the company.
Concerns still persist on how Twitter will moderate content under Musk. A coalition of civil rights groups have been pressuring Twitter's top advertisers to stop advertising on the service if Musk does not protect content moderation. Speaking at an investors' conference in New York Friday, Musk answered his critics.
So recently had a lot of difficulty with activist groups pressuring major advertisers to stop spending money on Twitter. This is despite us doing everything possible to appease them and to make it clear that moderation rules and hateful conduct rules have not changed, and we're continuing to enforce them. A number of major advertisers have stopped spending on Twitter.
Meanwhile, Musk has directed Twitter teams to find up to $1 billion in annual infrastructure cost savings. Musk has already fired most of the firm's top management. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Americans will go to the polls next week for the midterm congressional elections. President Joe Biden and former President Barack Obama were in Pennsylvania to support the Democratic ticket. This report from NBC.
Tonight, the political power players, presidents past and present, preparing to converge on Pennsylvania. As Republicans blame Democrats for rising prices, President Biden today welcoming a better-than-expected jobs report. 261,000 new hires last month, even as the Federal Reserve tries to slow the economy and tame inflation.
Folks, our economy continues to grow and add jobs, even as gas prices continue to come down. But we got a lot more to do.
But fears of a recession still linger, with companies like Amazon and Apple freezing hiring, and Lyft planning to lay off 13% of its staff. Republicans seizing on the slight uptick in the unemployment rate. The RNC saying it's the worst jobs report this year. Here in Pennsylvania's tight Senate race, a surprise endorsement overnight. Oprah Winfrey, who gave Dr. Mehmet Oz his TV start nearly 2 decades ago, publicly backing Oz's Democratic opponent, John Fetterman.
But I will tell you all this, if I lived in Pennsylvania, I would have already cast my vote for John Fetterman for many reasons.
The Oz campaign responding in a statement, Dr. Oz loves Oprah and respects the fact that they have different politics. The state will host dueling visits tomorrow with President Biden and former President Obama stumping together for Fetterman in Philadelphia, while former President Trump will rally his supporters for Oz across the state near Pittsburgh. The Senate race here could be decided by the suburbs of Philadelphia that propelled Mr. Trump in 2016, but proved key for Joe Biden 4 years later. Democrat Jess Brown, a mother of 2, is concerned about the rhetoric she hears from Republicans.
I'm scared. I don't align with their values. I don't align with the hate.
On Tuesday, she's voting for Fetterman, who's still recovering from a stroke.
Are you personally concerned about John Fetterman's health?
I am not. In terms of his ability to get the job done and to do a good job and to represent the issues that I care about, I'm not worried. He has my vote on Tuesday.
An hour away, Republican Janelle Kao homeschools 2 of her 3 children.
What's at stake in these midterms?
I think, honestly, the future of the nation.
For her, the Republicans' messaging on crime has hit close to home.
I'm worried about my children's safety, and that's a big concern for a lot of the other moms in the area, is the safety of our kids and our family.
In a meeting among foreign ministers of G7 countries in Germany, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the group of 7 countries is clear-eyed about the need to align their approach on China.
We all recognize the need to cooperate with China on global challenges, like the climate crisis, which we cannot address without the world's largest emitter being a part of it, and global health security. But in our discussions here, we're also clear-eyed about the need to align our approach to the PRC in the face of growing coercion and push back together against Beijing's market-distorting policies.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said the group agreed that China is a partner, but also a competitor and increasingly a systematic rival in many areas. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has spoken for the first time after being shot and wounded on Thursday in a suspected assassination attempt. Former cricket captain Khan named Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and 2 other high-profile officials as being involved in the attack, though he provided no evidence. The Prime Minister has rejected the allegation. On Thursday, one of his supporters was killed and 11 others injured in Wazirabad, Punjab, as he was embarking on a march to the capital, Islamabad. Khan was speaking from a hospital seated on a wheelchair with his right leg heavily bandaged. In Bahrain, thousands of Christians from around the Gulf region packed a stadium for Pope Francis, who conducted a mass. The Pope is on a 4-day visit to minister to the Catholic community in the overwhelmingly Muslim region. Pope Francis looped around the Bahrain National Stadium in his Pope Mobile before Mass. According to the Vatican, local organizers estimated some 30,000 people attended the service. Francis is on the first ever papal visit to the island kingdom. Back locally, the 2022 Honours and Awards presentation ceremony is being held for 3 days starting today. The ceremony took place at Government House with Chief Executive John Lee presenting honours and awards to 148 recipients today. There were 7 recipients of the Grand Bohemian Medal, including Executive Councillor Tommy Chung and the longest-serving permanent judge for the Court of Final Appeal, Roberto Ribeiro. 25 people received the Gold Bohemia Star. Olympic Games fencing gold medalist Cheung Ka Long and track cyclist Sarah Lee were among the 19 people who received the Silver Bohemia Star. Stepping into its second day, the Hong Kong Sevens continues to rack up huge crowds at the Hong Kong Stadium. Timothy Lee reports.
Excited crowds in the wildest of costumes cheering for the tried and tested athletes. Almost a ceremony of its own, regular participants of the Sevens come adorned in intricate and eccentric outfits, while many who came this year said it was their first time. This man said his son is part of his school's rugby team, which gave his family free tickets. He said he hasn't participated in large-scale events like the Sevens for a very long time. Seats on the stadium's south stand were almost full, but empty chairs dotted the higher stands. This spectator said the seats used to be full all the time in the past, but added that the atmosphere remains lackluster when compared with previous years. As the government relaxed COVID restrictions earlier, attendees of the games were allowed to eat and drink inside the stadium. With swarms of customers lining up for their in-game snacks, shop owners of the stadium's food stalls saw their businesses skyrocket. Those who wish to enter the stadium to watch this year's Sevens must first scan their vaccination pass. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.